Why does every Chargers breakthrough seem to end with the Raiders taking something from them? January 9th, 2022, Las Vegas. The Chargers need one stop in overtime to reach the playoffs. Daniel Carlson lines up from 47 yards. The kick splits the uprights. Raiders 35 to Chargers 32. Season over. Two franchises, 4 cities between them, 60 years of taking things from each other. The answer starts 60 years ago in a league the NFL didn't even respect. 2 franchises born in 1960, both fighting for California, both desperate to prove pro football could breathe west of the Mississippi. The Chargers started in Los Angeles, fled to San Diego. The Raiders clung to Oakland by their fingernails. They shared a state, shared a league, and shared the same stubborn refusal to die. And from the very first snap, they couldn't stand each other. And that was before Al Davis made it personal. The Raiders owned the 70s. Oakland won the AFC West 6 times between 1970 and 1976 and won a Super Bowl. The Chargers spent those same years collecting losing seasons like parking tickets. San Diego won 2 games in 1975. Ken Stabler ran the Oakland offense the way he lived, loose, reckless, and one step ahead of disaster. He threw sidearm. He scrambled when the pocket collapsed and sometimes when it didn't. John Madden built a defense around intimidation, and Stabler built an offense around audacity. And together, they turned the Oakland Coliseum into the loudest dead end in professional football. On November 21st, 1971, San Diego traveled to Oakland for a game that should have been routine. The Chargers scored 33 points. George Blanda connected on a 34-yard field goal. Jeff Queen punched in a 2-yard touchdown run. San Diego built a 24-10 lead by halftime. Oakland clawed even in the third quarter, then pulled ahead for good early in the fourth. The Chargers fought back, scratching out a late safety that cut the deficit to a single point, but the final gun caught them short. Oakland Raiders 34 to San Diego Chargers 33. 1 point. That margin told the Chargers everything they needed to know about the next decade. Close wasn't going to be enough. But Don Coryell arrived in San Diego in 1978 and rewired the franchise overnight. He installed an offense built on vertical passing, multiple tight end formations, and a quarterback with the arm to make it all work. Dan Fouts had been in San Diego since 1973, throwing into conservative schemes that wasted his cannon. Coryell uncaged him. Fouts started throwing 40 times a game, 50 times a game, and the Chargers went from afterthought to the most explosive offense in professional football. Then came September 10th, 1978, and the play that would haunt San Diego for generations. The Chargers led the Raiders late at San Diego Stadium. Air Coryell was about to announce itself with a signature win over the team that had tormented the franchise all decade. Stabler dropped back, pressured, and did what Stabler always did when the pocket collapsed. He improvised. The ball came loose from his hand, tumbling forward. Pete Banaszak swatted the loose ball toward the end zone. Dave Casper fell on it. Touchdown, Oakland. The officials signaled the score. San Diego's sideline erupted in disbelief. A fumble, batted forward by one Raider and recovered by another, had stolen a game the Chargers had won for 59 minutes. Oakland Raiders 21 to San Diego Chargers 20. The NFL changed the rules the following offseason. From that point forward, only the fumbling player could advance a fumble in the final 2 minutes. The league looked at what Stabler, Banaszak, and Casper had done and decided it could never happen again. The Chargers got a rule change. The Raiders got the win. The Chargers and Raiders split their 1980 regular season series. San Diego took the September meeting behind a Fouts touchdown pass to John Jefferson. Oakland answered at home in December. Then San Diego hosted the AFC Championship on January 11th, 1981. Favored at home, the franchise's best team ever assembled with Fouts, Charlie Joyner, and Kellen Winslow. But Jim Plunkett carved San Diego apart. He hit Raymond Chester for a 65-yard touchdown strike that silenced Jack Murphy Stadium. He ran one in himself from 5 yards out. Fouts answered with a 48-yard touchdown to Joyner, clawing back, refusing to let the game slip. San Diego fought to within 7. The comeback stalled there. Oakland Raiders 34 to San Diego Chargers 27. Oakland went to Super Bowl 15 and won it. Fouts went home. The Chargers could trade punches with Oakland in September. They could make it ugly at mid-season. But January belonged to the Raiders, and Davis already had his eyes on something beyond football. He had filed a lawsuit against the NFL to move the Raiders out of Oakland and down to Los Angeles, the second biggest media market in the country. The Chargers thought losing the AFC Championship was the worst thing the Raiders could do to them. They were wrong. Davis won his lawsuit against the NFL. A jury in Los Angeles sided with him, and by the fall of 1982, the Raiders were playing home games at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. The franchise that had terrorized the Chargers from Oakland now terrorized them from 120 miles up Interstate 5. Same silver and black, same attitude, different zip code. The first meeting came on November 22, 1982, inside the Coliseum. The Raiders christened their new home against the team they'd spent a decade tormenting. San Diego jumped to 24-0, 24-7 at halftime. Then Marcus Allen ripped off 2 second-half touchdowns. Frank Hawkins punched one in. The Chargers' early cushion evaporated, and the Raiders fought their way in front by the final whistle. Los Angeles Raiders 28 to San Diego Chargers 24. 4 points. New city, same result. The Chargers drove south on the freeway that night with a familiar ache in their ribs. Some rivalries need proximity to survive. This one fed on something deeper than geography. It fed on the specific, grinding frustration of losing to the same organization no matter where that organization set up shop. But the relocation didn't strengthen the Raiders the way Davis had imagined. Los Angeles already had the Rams. The Coliseum was cavernous and half empty on Sundays. Davis had traded the black hole's ferocity for Hollywood's indifference, and the football reflected it. The Raiders won a Super Bowl in the 1983 season, beating Washington, but the years after that title eroded steadily. Meanwhile, the Chargers were quietly rebuilding. Bobby Beathard arrived in San Diego in 1990 as general manager. He had built 2 Super Bowl winning rosters in Washington, and he attacked the Chargers roster with the same obsessive detail, trading down in drafts, stockpiling picks, finding players other teams had overlooked. His most important inheritance was already on the roster. Junior Seau had been drafted 5th overall in 1990, a linebacker from USC who played every snap like it was the last one he'd ever take. Seau didn't just fill gaps in the defense, he erased them. He blitzed through offensive lines, dropped into coverage against tight ends, and chased running backs sideline to sideline with a fury that made offensive coordinators redesign their game plans around avoiding him. On November 10th, 1985, before Seau's arrival, the Chargers had already proven they could trade punches with the Raiders. At Jack Murphy Stadium, Fouts and the Chargers engaged in a wild afternoon. Wes Chandler hauled in a 10-yard touchdown pass from Fouts. Bob Thomas drilled a 34-yard field goal. The Raiders answered through Jesse Hester, who caught a 35-yard touchdown from Mark Wilson. Points kept coming. Neither defense could hold. San Diego Chargers 40 to Los Angeles Raiders 34. A rare, bright afternoon in a dark decade for San Diego. But the Raiders still owned the head-to-head ledger through the 80s and into the early 90s. And the Chargers still couldn't shake the feeling that beating Los Angeles in November meant nothing if they couldn't beat anyone in January. Then 1994 happened. Beathard's roster construction and Seau's relentless play collided with a season that felt, for the first time, like destiny belonged to San Diego. On September 25th, the Chargers traveled to the Coliseum to face the Raiders. Darian Gordon fielded a punt and returned it 90 yards for a touchdown. Natrone Means bulldozed in from 1 yard out. John Carney added a 38-yard field goal. The Chargers held on by their fingernails. San Diego Chargers 26 to Los Angeles Raiders 24. 2 points. San Diego's margin over the Raiders was always razor thin, even when everything else was going right. But this time, everything else kept going right. The Chargers rode that momentum all the way to Super Bowl 29. Seau played through injuries that would have sidelined most linebackers for weeks. The franchise had finally stepped out of the shadow the Raiders had cast over them for 25 years. But San Francisco was waiting. The 49ers shredded San Diego in Miami, and the Chargers' greatest season ended under a scoreboard that read 49-26, 14-7 after 1, 28-10 at halftime, 42-18 through 3. The dream didn't die in a single moment. It was buried by halftime and shoveled over by the fourth. And Davis, the man who had moved the Raiders to Los Angeles 13 years earlier, quietly began negotiating a return to Oakland. The Coliseum had never filled the way he'd promised. The city of Los Angeles had never built him the stadium he'd demanded. The Nomad was going home, an admission, however quiet, that the grand Los Angeles experiment hadn't delivered. Junior Seau dragged the Chargers to a Super Bowl. The Raiders crawled back to Oakland. The rivalry was supposed to reset. Instead, it went into hibernation. Both teams limped into the late 90s like boxers who'd forgotten why they were fighting. The Raiders returned to Oakland in 1995 to an unrenovated Coliseum and an uncompetitive roster. The Chargers still had Seau, but the Super Bowl hangover lingered. For 4 consecutive seasons, neither franchise finished above 500 in the same year. The rivalry wasn't dead. It was just irrelevant. Rich Gannon changed that. A journeyman who'd played for 3 teams before arriving in Oakland in 1999, he refused to take sacks, preferring to throw across his body on the run into triple coverage. Al Davis, who'd spent decades chasing the deep ball, suddenly had a quarterback who preferred the intermediate route. But Gannon dragged the Raiders to the 2002 Super Bowl. Oakland won 12 games that regular season. San Diego had its own young arm, Drew Brees, learning to command the offense with a compact release and obsessive film habit. Then Tampa Bay in Super Bowl 37. John Gruden, Oakland's former coach, knew every audible and hot route. Tampa Bay picked Gannon off 5 times, returning 3 for touchdowns. Oakland's window didn't just close, it shattered. The Chargers drafted LaDainian Tomlinson, 5th overall in 2001. His mother worked 2 jobs after his father left when he was 7. He carried that weight quietly, channeling it into a running style combining patience with a violent burst through the hole. He didn't talk, he scored. On September 28, 2003, Gannon hit Tim Brown on a 36-yard touchdown. Tomlinson answered with a trick play, throwing a 21-yard touchdown pass to Brees. Brees then found Justin Peel for a 7-yard score. San Diego clawed back, traded punches, refused to fold. Final score, Oakland Raiders 34 to San Diego Chargers 31. 3 points. A loss reminding San Diego that even a diminished Oakland could still draw blood. But the Raiders had already begun their descent. Gannon's body broke down. Davis cycled through 4 head coaches in 5 years after Callahan's firing. The franchise became the league's punchline. Into that vacuum stepped Tomlinson, who turned the rivalry into a clinic. September 11, 2006, McAfee Coliseum. Tomlinson scored from the 1-yard line in the first half. In Phillip Rivers' first career start, Antonio Gates hauled in a 4-yard touchdown pass, and Michael Turner punched one in from a yard out. The defense held Oakland to fewer than 200 total yards. The Raiders never crossed the goal line. Final score, San Diego Chargers 27 to Oakland Raiders nothing. Tomlinson finished 2006 with 31 touchdowns, shattering Sean Alexander's record. He won MVP. He scored twice against the Raiders on November 26 on 4- and 10-yard rushes in a 21-14 San Diego victory. He scored 4 more times in the first 2007 meeting and again in the second meeting on a 7-yard pass from Phillip Rivers, and 3 more times against them in 2008. The Raiders couldn't tackle him, scheme against him, or slow him down, but the Chargers' dominance over Oakland masked deeper rot. San Diego kept losing in January to the Patriots, to the Jets. The greatest individual stretch in Chargers history. Produced 1 conference championship appearance during Tomlinson's prime. He owned the Raiders the way Air Coryell had owned regular season stat sheets, brilliantly, beautifully, and without a ring. The small market franchise was running out of reasons to keep San Diego invested. The Spanos family noticed the empty seats. Qualcomm Stadium needed hundreds of millions the city wouldn't fund. Quietly, relocation conversations began. On October 10, 2010, Oakland hit back. Rock Cartwright blocked a Mike Cyphers punt for a safety. Hiram Eugene returned another blocked punt 5 yards for a touchdown. Sebastian Janikowski drilled a 50-yard field goal. Final score, Oakland Raiders 35 to San Diego Chargers 27. The first sign the Raiders might climb out of the wreckage. Davis himself was 81, frail, rarely seen, still making every personnel decision. He died October 8, 2011 at 82. Mark Davis inherited a franchise with no modern stadium and his father's restlessness coded into its identity. LaDainian Tomlinson owned the Raiders, but owning a rivalry and owning a championship are two very different things. And the next decade would prove that neither franchise could hold on to anything, not wins, not quarterbacks, not even their zip codes. Both teams had already lost their cities. Now, they were about to lose each other. Mark Davis inherited his father's franchise and his father's restlessness. Within a year of Al's death, the son was shopping for a new stadium, a new city, a new start. The Spanos family was doing the same in San Diego. Two franchises born on the California coast, both running from the places that raised them. The Chargers left first. In January 2017, Dean Spanos announced the move to Los Angeles. The team played its first LA season in StubHub Center. Capacity 27,000. Visiting fans outnumbered Chargers fans most weeks. The franchise felt hollowed out. But here's what nobody really answers. Can two teams that keep chasing each other across cities, decades, and identities ever settle who owns the AFC West? The Raiders followed in 2020, relocating to a $1.9 billion palace in Nevada. The Raiders had left Oakland. The Chargers had returned to Los Angeles, the same city where the franchise had played its very first AFL season back in 1960. Two California teams, still anchored to California, just not to the places where most of their history lived. The rivalry between two California franchises was now staged in Los Angeles and Las Vegas. The final Chargers game at what was by then called Ring Central Coliseum landed on November 7, 2019. The Raiders took that one, 26-24. But the sting of farewell hung over everything regardless. The last NFL game inside those walls came 5 weeks later, on December 15th, when the Jaguars rolled into town. Raiders fans packed the black hole one last time. Jaguars 20, Raiders 16. The Coliseum gates closed for good on NFL football. Then came Justin Herbert. The Chargers drafted him 6th overall in 2020. He threw for over 4,000 yards as a rookie. The Chargers finally had a generational arm, but having a generational arm and winning the games that matter are two different things in this rivalry. The Chargers' pattern of losing to the Raiders in the moments that counted most was about to echo one more time. January 9th, 2022, Week 18, Allegiant Stadium. Both teams sat at 9 wins and 7 losses. A victory meant a playoff berth. A loss meant going home. The Raiders jumped on Los Angeles first, 10-0 in the first quarter. A Daniel Carlson field goal and a Carr touchdown pass to Hunter Renfrow. The Chargers answered in the second with 2 Austin Ekeler touchdowns. The teams traded blows into the final minute, and Mike Williams caught a 12-yard pass on the last play of regulation to tie it. Overtime. Carlson drilled a 40-yard field goal to give Las Vegas the lead first. Herbert marched the Chargers back down the field, and Dustin Hopkins answered with a 41-yard field goal to tie it again. One more stop, and the pattern broke. They couldn't get it. Carr found receivers in soft zones. With 2 seconds left on the clock, Carlson lined up a 47-yard field goal. The ball sailed through. Final score, Las Vegas Raiders 35 to Los Angeles Chargers 32. Herbert stood on the sideline, helmet in hand. He'd never heard of the specific play that broke San Diego's heart in the 1980 AFC Championship, but he was living the same story. The Chargers building something beautiful, the Raiders tearing it down at the last possible second. The Raiders' dysfunction never paused. John Gruden resigned in October 2021 after leaked emails. Antonio Pierce got the full-time job in 2024, then was fired after 1 season. The franchise kept moving but couldn't outrun its own instability. That instability produced one of the most grotesque scorelines in NFL history. December 14th, 2023, Allegiant Stadium. Aiden O'Connell threw touchdown passes of 30 yards to Trey Tucker and 22 yards to Jacoby Myers. Zamir White punched one in from the 1-yard line. The Raiders scored 9 touchdowns. The Chargers scored 3. Final score, Las Vegas Raiders 63 to Los Angeles Chargers 21. The most lopsided result in the rivalry's existence. But the Chargers hired Jim Harbaugh. The man who just won a national championship at Michigan walked in with khakis, a dry erase marker, and a scheme built around protecting Herbert and punishing opponents on the ground. He rebuilt the defense, simplified the offense. He made the Chargers boring in the best possible way. They stopped losing close games. In 2025, the Chargers swept the Raiders. First, 20-9, then 31-14. Harbaugh's Chargers controlled both games from the opening drive, something the franchise hadn't managed consistently against the Raiders in decades. Herbert's arc from watching Carlson's kick split the uprights to a quarterback sweeping the Raiders under a coach who refused to let talent go to waste. That was the thread connecting 60 years of heartbreak to something that felt, for the first time, like it might actually hold. Two franchises, 4 cities between them, and somehow, after all of it, the games still feel like they matter more than the records say they should. The Raiders fired Antonio Pierce and started over, again. Pete Carroll took the head coaching job in 2025, a 73-year-old man tasked with rebuilding a franchise that had cycled through 4 head coaches in 5 years. Las Vegas drafted running back Ashton Jeanty, 6th overall, traded for Davante Adams' replacement, and hoped Carroll's energy could paper over the cracks in a roster that still lacked a franchise quarterback. Herbert signed the then-record quarterback contract and looked comfortable in Harbaugh's system for the first time in his career. The Chargers added defensive pieces through the draft, retained their offensive line, and built something that resembled stability, a foreign concept on both sides of this rivalry. But stability and sustained success have never been the same thing for either franchise. The Chargers still play in a stadium where Raiders fans regularly claim half the seats. The Raiders still haven't won a playoff game since January 19, 2003. Two organizations with 4 cities between them: Oakland, Los Angeles, San Diego, Las Vegas. A number padded by the fact that both franchises have called Los Angeles home, and neither one can point to a decade without upheaval. Can two teams that keep chasing each other across cities, decades, and identities ever settle who owns the AFC West? Maybe ownership was never the point. Fouts couldn't claim it, Stabler wouldn't share it. Tomlinson earned it in the regular season and watched it vanish in January. Herbert swept the Raiders in 2025 and still hasn't won a conference championship. The grudge doesn't need a winner. It just needs September to come back around. 2 franchises, 4 cities, and a highway between Los Angeles and Las Vegas that gets a little more crowded every fall. If this grudge hits you somewhere, subscribe so you never miss a touchdown time warp. And in the comments, who actually owns this? The Chargers or the Raiders? Let's hear it.